Hey guys, it's Steve here from Restalgia, putting this video together to show you guys how to load BleemSync 1.0 onto your PlayStation Classic. So really quickly before we get started, we want to make note, both the developers and us as YouTubers want to make sure that everyone understands that BleemSync 1.0 is just a public beta. There are still going to be some issues that creep up, just as everyone has found with some of the previous builds. Nothing is perfect yet. This is as close to perfect as they felt was necessary to get it out to the public, but it is still considered a public beta, so you may run into little glitches here and there. There may be some functionality problems. There may be some compatibility issues with certain games. The application itself may have a little bit of glitching here and there, but just know that because it is a public beta, it's not going to be perfect. Now, I will tell you they've done a fantastic job, but we just want full disclosure to let you guys know. You guys have waited a long time, and it's finally here. Version 1.0 is here, but it is a public beta, so don't expect it to be absolutely perfect because it's not, but it is pretty darn good. So the very first thing that we're going to need to do is we are going to need to download the BleemSync 1.0 file right from the website. Now, as you can see, I've already got that downloaded, but I'll be sure to leave a link in the description below. Just click on that link. It'll take you to the Mod My Classic page. Just download the link right from there, and it'll spit it out right onto your desktop. So for this video, we're going to talk about two different ways to install BleemSync 1.0. You can either do a fresh install, which is the highly recommended way, or you can try to upgrade from your previous build, which would likely be 0.4.1 up to 1.0. Now, I do want to make a strong note that if you are upgrading from 0.4.1 up to 1.0, there is a very real possibility that you will either lose data or it will not work properly. So it is my recommendation, as well as the developers, to build it from scratch again. And I know that doesn't sound like it's a lot of fun, especially if you've spent a lot of time in it, but the way that the developers have set up the new UI in order to load your games onto the PlayStation Classic, it does make it a little bit less painful. So that would be my recommendation. Now, in this video, I am going to show you both ways. They are relatively similar, but there is a couple additional steps that you have to take if you are upgrading, and I will go through that in the video as I'm going along. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to right click on our BleemSync 1.0 file, and we're going to extract it to the desktop within its own folder. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and drag this right over underneath of the zip file. We're not going to use the zip file anymore, but I do like to keep them together. Next, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make our USB drive. So in the computer here, I've actually got two USB drives because, like I said, I'm going to be doing one that is a pre-existing build, and I'm going to be doing one that is a new build. So as you can see here, I've got my Sony in drive L, and then I've got a Sony in drive J. The one in L clearly has data on it. That's my pre-existing build. Now that's running 0.4.1, and it only has 1 or 2 games. I just made a very, very basic build, so it doesn't take a long time to do it, but that's kind of what I'm working with here. And then as you can see in my J drive, it's completely empty. Just to confirm, what we want to do is we're going to right click on it. We're going to format the drive. We want to make sure that it is labeled Sony in all caps. And we are going to make sure for the time being that it is going to be a FAT32 build. So we're going to go ahead and hit start. It's going to confirm that it's going to delete all the data on the disk. Do we want to do that? And I say yes. And it is complete. Perfect. So now we have our working drive here, and we've got our pre-existing build. So what we're going to do first is we're going to open up our new drive, and I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. Perfect. So now we've got our new drive right over here, and we've got our BleemSync folder on the left-hand side now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy it all into the drive. And that'll only take about 30 or so seconds. Okay, so now that those files have transferred over, that's all that we need to do right now on the new drive. What I'm going to do is minimize that, and I'm going to show you what you would be doing if you had a pre-existing build. So I'm going to pull up that drive that is pre-existing, and that was L. And I'm going to pull this over to the right side so then we can take a look at that. So inside our pre-existing build, you can see that we've got a payload folder and we've got an LOL hack folder. We actually need to delete those from our drive. So I'm going to go ahead and select the two and only those two. If you delete any of the other system files, you may end up with errors when you're trying to install the new version of BleemSync. So make sure the only two folders that you delete are the payload folder and the LOL hack folder. If you have a BleemSync folder in there as well, the one with the application, you can also delete that. In my case, I never include the BleemSync folder onto my builds, so I don't have to delete it. But if you also have that BleemSync folder, make sure you delete that one as well. So we're going to go ahead and delete these two folders right now, and we are going to get rid of those. Now that they are gone, we're going to do the same thing as we did with the new drive. We're going to copy our BleemSync and payload files from the BleemSync 1.0 folder, and we're just going to copy them over to our jump drive. Alright guys, now that that is all copied over, we can go ahead and close our BleemSync 1.0 folder. We're not going to need that anymore. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to eject our USB drives from our computer and we're going to pop them into our PlayStation Classic. Now before you go ahead and do that, you need to make sure that both the power cord is unplugged as well as the HDMI is unplugged and that there's nothing connected to it other than possibly your first-person controller. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to switch over to a view of my PlayStation Classic so you can see exactly what it's supposed to look like when you're plugging everything in. And then I'm going to shift over to what is visible on screen as soon as you power on the PlayStation Classic. So again, nothing connected into the PlayStation Classic other than possibly your PlayStation 1 controller. And then you're going to pop your USB drive into controller port 2. And before you do anything else, you're just going to leave it there for 2 or 3 seconds. You're going to pop your HDMI cable into the back of the console, and then you're going to put the power cord in. So we're going to go ahead and switch over now. Alright guys, as you can see here, I've got my PlayStation Classic with nothing connected other than Player 1 controller. I'm going to take my USB stick and I'm going to pop it into the second controller port. And now I'm going to wait a couple seconds and I'm going to grab my HDMI cable. I'm going to pop that into the back. Now I'm going to grab my power cord and I'm going to pop my power cord into the console and I'm going to wait for my amber light to turn on. Once the amber light turns on, we're going to see that my USB stick recognized it as well, and we're going to press the power button to turn it on. Once we press this button, it's going to install a script on our PlayStation Classic, and when it's complete, you're going to see an on-screen notification that it has completed and that it will restart in about 5 seconds. This is what it looks like. Once it's done installing, your PlayStation Classic will start flashing red, and that'll indicate that it is completed, and it'll restart itself in about 5 or so seconds. Once it is completely turned off, the amber light will turn back on, and then you can press the power button again to turn your console back on to finish the installation of the hack. Alright guys, so now that your PlayStation Classic has turned off, what you're going to want to do is turn it back on. It's going to come on to the BleemSync logo, and then it's going to take you straight into the boot menu. And what that means is that you are now hacked. Your PlayStation Classic has loaded on the information that it needs right onto the console, so now it can actually run different formats. So before we go ahead and do anything, what I am going to quickly show you guys is in BleemSync, it's going to have all 20 games that were originally on the console, plus the 2 additional games I had on the pre-existing build. Now, if you're using a brand new USB drive or you're using a freshly formatted USB drive, there'll be nothing in the BleemSync option except for the stock 20 games. But for the purposes of this, I did load up the pre-existing build to show you guys what it would be like and if your games would actually carry over. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to BleemSync. It's going to load the health and safety warnings in the settings menu screen, and you can see right away I've got 007, which was obviously not a part of the PlayStation Classic games that came in, and Blasto. So everything else is still in there. All the original 20 games are still showing, but all the games that we previously had on our build have carried forward. Now, As I said before, if this is a new build for you, you clearly won't have 007 and you won't have Blasto, but you will have everything else. So all of these other games will still be shown on your USB drive when you go into BleemSync. So now what we need to do is we need to go back to our boot menu, and instead of having your PlayStation Classic plugged into an outlet, you're actually going to plug it into one of the USB ports on your computer. Okay, so now all I have to do is power down my PlayStation Classic and plug the power cord into a USB port on my computer. Additionally, I have to remove the USB thumb drive from the PlayStation Classic, and I have to plug that into my computer as well, because we have to do one more thing to the USB drive before we're ready to start loading games. So I'm going to switch over now. All right, guys, now that we have booted up our console and we have had the installation screen come up and tell us, hey, everything's good, and the console turned off, what we need to do is power down our console, unplug it, and we need to remove our USB drive. And we need to put our USB drive back into our computer. So I've gone ahead and plugged my USB drive back into my computer. I'm probably going to get an error saying that there's something wrong with it or that I can't read it properly, but I'm just going to wait for it to load up. There it is. So I didn't actually get any errors. One thing that we're going to need to do now that we've gone ahead and installed everything that needs to be installed on our PlayStation Classic, is we are actually going to want to reformat our USB drive and change it from FAT32 to exFAT. So in order to do this properly, what we're going to need to do is we're going to create a new folder on our desktop. And I'm just going to leave it labeled as new folder. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to swing it over to the right, and I'm going to have my USB drive on the left and the empty folder on the right. What I need to do is I need to copy everything from my USB drive over to this empty folder. So this will take about 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward this just so you guys don't have to watch the files transfer. Okay guys, so now that those files have all transferred over to our new folder, we're actually going to go ahead and format our USB drive. So we're going to right click on it, we are going to format, we're going to leave it labeled as Sony, but we're going to change the file system to exFAT. Now you can choose NTFS, but from the information that we've gotten so far, exFAT tends to work best. So we're going to go ahead and select exFAT. And we're going to go ahead and start our format. It's going to tell us we're going to erase everything. That's totally okay because we've already transferred all our information from the USB drive into that new folder. We're going to hit OK. It's going to be done, and that new folder should pop up. Or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to open that drive, and it's right over here. And now all we need to do is just recopy all that stuff right back onto the drive. So we're going to go ahead and start doing that. Again, it'll take about 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm just going to fast forward so you guys don't have to sit through this and watch it. Okay guys, so now that all of our folders and files have transferred back onto our USB drive, we're good to go. Now that we formatted that drive to be exFAT, that is the best format for the PlayStation Classic and this build, so we're good to go. I'm just going to go ahead and remove my USB drive from the computer. And this new folder that we just created, it's pretty much trash, so we can go ahead and delete it, but I'm going to leave it just in case there was an issue with the transfer. But once we've plugged in our USB drive and it turns on, we know there isn't, and we can go ahead and delete that folder. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my USB drive, and I'm going to pop it into my PlayStation Classic. Okay guys, now that we've got our USB plugged into our PlayStation Classic and it is turned on, and it's sitting currently on the boot menu, what we need to do is actually transfer some games onto our console. So what we need to do is switch over to our internet browser, and for the purposes of this video, I'm using Chrome, but Safari is supported, Microsoft Edge is supported, Mozilla Firefox is supported. A lot of the mainstream browsers are supported. The one that is not currently supported is Internet Explorer, which I'm not quite sure why anyone would be using Internet Explorer, and if you are, please stop. But yeah, that is the only browser that is not currently working. But what we need to do is open up a new tab, and we need to go to BleemSyncUI.com. This is what the web application actually is. So as you can see right away, you've got a game manager, which will display the 2 games that I currently have on there, 007, The World Is Not Enough, and Blasto. To the right of that, you've got an add new game feature. and then to the left of it you've got a couple option settings. So what we're going to do for this right now is I'm going to show you guys how to add a couple games on, and one of the games that we're going to add is a bin and queue file, and the other one is going to be a PBP file. They're both done the same way, but I do want to show in this video that they are both working correctly and everything is functioning the way it should. I'm also going to outline one of the common errors that people were getting when they were trying to load bin and queue files and how to fix that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to load, or I'm going to show you what it would be like if you were to load a bin and queue file and it would work perfectly. So you're going to choose your file. We're going to select a game. So for this, I'm going to choose Breath of Fire 4. I'm going to click open, and for that you have to select both the bin and the queue file. And you can see right away, if you hover over two files, it'll show Breath of Fire 4 bin and queue. It automatically scrapes for the artwork. It automatically populates the name, the sort name, description, release date, player one, developer, publisher, and sorry, it doesn't populate description. None of the games do, but there's nowhere for that to display within BleemSync. So, but all the other information is automatically populated. But there is a problem if you have your queue files that are not properly configured. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that, and we'll use that as our example for our bin and queue. So we're going to open up Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and when I try to open this one, you're going to see I get a not all binary files were selected or they are misnamed. So what that is saying is that in the queue file, it is pointing to more than one bin file, or it's pointing to something that doesn't exist. So the way that we need to fix that is we need to rewrite our queue file. There is a really awesome PlayStation Queue Maker online, and what I'll do is I'll be sure to leave a link to that in the description below. But all you need to do is drag your bin file here, and it'll spit out the contents of what the queue file should actually be. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm going to grab my bin file and I'm going to drag it right over to this little box where it says to drop your bin files, and it's going to spit out your queue file, and this is what should be in the queue file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to open up the queue file in Notepad++. I'm going to select everything. So you can see in here it's looking for an audio track, which was not included. So we're going to go ahead and paste over that to put in the new queue information. We're going to save it. We're going to close this, and we can minimize this, and we can go back over here and we can try to add those files again. So if we go again, will it transfer? No. Okay, so what we need to do, this is one of the glitches that we've noticed. If you try to add a bin and queue that don't function right away, what you need to do is you need to add one that does actually work. So in this case, we'll do Breath of Fire 4 again. That is in there. Then we're going to go back. We're going to go to Castlevania again. And now we're going to try. There we go. So I didn't get the error this time because I corrected the queue file. And now it says that we've got our two files, our bin and our queue. The artwork is there, the name, the sort name, the release date, publisher, developer, etc. So now all we need to do is press add game. So now it's going to load the game in. You're going to see a little progress bar on screen, and what that's going to tell you is just how far along it is. When that's finished, you can go ahead and add another game, but I'm going to quickly fast forward. Okay, perfect. So now that's loaded in there, you'll see right away in the game manager, 007, The World Is Not Enough, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and Blasto. So for some reason it didn't spit it in alphabetical order, and that's not a big deal. What we can do is we can click and hold on the folder and just drag it to where we want it to be. So that's the nice thing about this new management system, is we don't have to rename a bunch of folders. If you want to change the order of a game or of certain games on your PlayStation Classic, you just grab them and drag them and put them wherever you want them to be. So that is really nice, really handy. Next, we're going to go ahead and try to add a PBP file. So we're going to add a new game, we're going to choose a file, and I'm going to go back to all of my ROMs, and I think we will use Harvest Moon Back to Nature for our PBP file. We'll hit open. It'll automatically scrape the artwork. It'll grab the name, publisher, release date, number of players, and we're going to add the game. One thing you're going to notice is that when you're loading a PBP file, clearly this game is a smaller game, but they tend to load much quicker. And the reason for that is because all you're loading up is the game itself, not an image of an entire disc. So that tends to make things go a little bit quicker. And again, it didn't spit it in the correct order, but we're going to go ahead and pop it down. It should, and I think because I was kind of playing around with the settings a little bit, it's not going in alphabetical order. If you're going on a new build, it should spit it out in alphabetical order for you. The next thing that I want to talk to you guys about is if you wanted to remove a game, you cannot, under any circumstances, plug your USB drive into your computer and just go into the games folder and start deleting and adding games there. Or if you want to add games en masse, to just go into the USB directly and load all your games that way. It will not work. With the current application, the only way to transfer games onto your PlayStation Classic and have it work is by loading them one by one through this application. So be sure to do it that way. I know it can take a little bit longer and you have to be a little bit more present. You can't just click and drag 100 games on and just walk away from your computer, but this is the way it has to be for right now, and I'm sure that's something that they're working on for future builds, but that's the current system right now. So be sure that if you want to add or remove games, it's done right through this user interface. If you do want to remove games, you just have to click on the file itself or the game itself, and if you scroll down, there's going to be an update game and a delete button. If you were to change the name of it, or if there was incorrect information for the developer or publisher, you would just correct it and then press update. Or if you want to delete a game, you just click delete and it'll just remove it from your system. The other thing that I wanted to chat with you guys about is in the PlayStation Classic settings. If you go to BleemSync preferences, you actually can do a little bit of customization here. So if you want to enable Quick Boot, what that essentially does is it removes the Sony animation splash that happens when you turn on your console. So if you don't like that, you can shut that off and remove it altogether. You can also remove the health warning that comes up right as you enter BleemSync, right before it takes you to the carousel. So that's another nice feature. And then if you really don't want to use RetroArch and you want to go directly into the stock UI, you can set it up so that way it boots directly into the stock UI, and vice versa. If you want to load directly into RetroArch only, you can choose that as well, but for right now I'm going to leave it as boots directly into the boot menu selector. Additionally, you can also change locations of your themes and your audio files, and that's all right here. So this is the location of the UI themes. You can change the path in order to get and select which theme. Additionally, you can load a bunch of themes into that folder, and then you can have it select a random theme from the theme folder upon each boot. So that is a cool feature too. But other than that, there's not a whole lot really to look at in here. I'll leave you guys to kind of play around with it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to my PlayStation Classic, and I'm going to show you guys that the games that we just loaded are indeed there. The nice thing about this, when you transfer the games on, you don't have to reboot your console. They will automatically be there for you, so you can just jump right into it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over there now. Alright guys, so we are now back on our boot menu. I'm going to go ahead and click on BleemSync, and just to confirm, I have not restarted my computer since I've loaded those two games onto it. I'm just going to go ahead and load up BleemSync. So we're going to go again and get our health and safety warning splash screen, and now we're just going to take a look for those new games. And there's our Harvest Moon. And there's our Castlevania. So as you can see, we did not need to reboot our system. They automatically went in there. Now, the big thing that a lot of people were asking is if there is a way to get out of this and back into your boot menu, just like a quick release or quick action buttons on your controller, and there is not. So what you need to do is press the power button, wait till it turns off, press the power button on again, and then you can get into your boot menu. If you are in RetroArch though, if you exit the RetroArch through the main menu, it will take you back to the boot menu. So that is a nice feature there. But that's pretty much it, guys. Now that we've got BleemSync 1.0, I will leave it to you guys to play around. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Give the video a thumbs up, and let me know in the comment section below if there's any customizable options that you guys want to see me do in terms of a tutorial video, or if there's any other videos that you guys are interested in seeing from me. I've got some really cool mod videos coming up. I've got a video that'll hopefully be released later on this week or on the weekend about how to mod a Super Game Boy, which is it's a really cool mod, and I don't think anyone else has done it, and it makes the Super Game Boy a little bit more useful. So be sure to keep your eyes peeled for that. But again, leave a comment in the comment section below, subscribe to the channel, thumbs up to the video, and I'll talk to you guys again real soon.